Good day. Welcome to another edition of Ebima Mungo's Perspective on Global Affairs, the X-Review edition. President Trump has been very vocal about his demand and his need, his desire to acquire Greenland for America. And that has been what has been dominating the news cycle and what has caused immense disquiet among European politicians, especially 8 countries that he has recently threatened with tariffs from February 1st, 2026. But beyond that also, he has started to identify particular countries that he thinks stand in his way to getting Greenland. And President Trump has indicated clearly that he may have a military design on Greenland. Today, we saw a letter that President Trump sent to the Prime Minister of Norway. And this letter is very, very specific as to what President Trump's desire is. This is the letter here. It says, the letter is from the White House headed, Dear Jonas, I think his name is Jonas Storr. He said, considering your country decided not to give me the Nobel Prize for having stopped 8 wars, plus I no longer feel an obligation to think purely of peace, although it will always be predominant. But we can now think about what is good and proper for the United States. Denmark cannot protect the land from Russia or China. And why do they have a right of ownership anyway? There is no written document. It's only that a boat landed there hundreds of years ago. But we have boats landing there also. I have done more for NATO than any other person since the founding, and now NATO should do something for the United States. The world is not secure unless we have complete and total control of Greenland. Thank you, President Donald J. Trump. It's very obvious with this letter, that President Trump is very intent on taking military action. He says very clearly that he is not on the side of peace anymore as regards to this particular matter, because anyway, the Nobel Peace Committee did not give him the Peace Prize. But going on to the next story now, it is one that where China is saying that the United States must stop using China's name as a pretext to invade Greenland. China didn't even, they were not subtle about it. From China virus to now using China as an excuse to swallow Greenland, Trump keeps dragging Beijing into his own mess. And at some point, the slap had to. So this is what the Chinese have actually said. The Chinese have said, we have no hand in Greenland. Don't use us as your excuse for trying to acquire or take Greenland.
Positions on Greenland multiple times. The international law based on the purposes and principles of the UN Charter is the foundation of the existing international order. It must be safeguarded. We urge the US side to stop using the so-called China threat to use as a pretext to gain selfish gains.
So the Chinese have pushed back and said, we are not interested in it. One thing too I can always say is that somehow the Russians have shown they have no problem with Trump taking Greenland because they've not opposed it, and they know the benefit to them that it will cause a lot of friction between the Western Alliance, and for that reason, the Russians have been very quiet about Trump's moves on Greenland. In fact, President Putin has gone ahead to say that he understands why he has always wanted Greenland. This next story is about European leaders are discussing Trump in group chat, Politico. Politico is reporting that, according to the publication, this informal group of brothers in misfortune had been dubbed the Washington Group. The members of the chat include Macron, Merz, Meloni, Ursula von der Leyen, Starmer, and Stubb. Every time Trump does something outrageous, this correspondence comes to life again. And the Politico is German, I should point out, because it is owned by Axel Special. Axel is a German publication. It's a German publication owned by a private equity firm, and they now own Politico. And most times they push agendas that tend to favor the Europeans or put Trump in a bad light. So that is what they are saying here now. They are saying that they formed a group chat. Of course, they are discussing. There's a lot of disquiet in Europe over this Greenland issue because it will be a land grab like they have never seen before. The jam here, Mario Nafo, one of the biggest voices on Twitter, he has 2.8 million followers, definitely a large voice. He says Germany wants US tariffs will trigger measured European response. German Finance Minister Lars Klingbeil responding to Trump's tariff threat. Let me be very clear. We are not seeking escalation. Our hands remain outstretched, but we will not be blackmailed. No escalation is good. So the Germans are saying that.
Ausgestreckt, aber wir sind nicht bereit, uns erpressen zu lassen. Wir werden mit den Ich habe kein Interesse an einer Eskalation. Ich suche auch keine Eskalation, bin fest davon überzeugt, eine transatlantische Eskalation geht zu Lasten der Menschen und der Wirtschaft auf beiden Seiten des Atlantiks. Und deswegen ist immer klar, wir sind bereit, Lösungen zu finden zu lassen.
The Germans, the Europeans have themselves a very big, tough proposition here. The economy is very fragile. And this talk about tariff has stirred them more than any other thing because they can't afford trade wars at this time. They are busy trying to make new trade alliances. In fact, the European Union just signed one with the Mercosur, the South American Trade Union, Regional Trade Authority there. And it is now clear that they are in a very bad situation. Their economies are very fragile. They have not been in growth to a large extent. The only country growing in the whole of Europe as at this time is actually the Russian state. So tariffs and an escalation and retaliatory tariffs is not good for their economy. The Americans can always they can always wither it because they have a large market, and it is this market that President Trump has weaponized against them. Anyway, this is a very important story here, and it actually reflects what is going on in the European Union at this moment in time. President Viktor Orban is making a very serious allegation, and indeed, it is clear for all of us in the world to see. Hungary, Viktor Orban, today Europe is run by a German war troika. The president of the commission is a German woman, the German chancellor, obviously, and then the leader of the largest faction in the European Parliament, the EPP, is also a German man. These three people are the ones shaping Europe's war policy. It seems like the agenda of the EU has suddenly become one, clearly that focuses on defeating Russia. They want to use this big supranational body to become what will give them revenge for historical losses. You will find the voice of Ursula von der Leyen, the voice of Kaja Kallas. All these have some form of hatred for the Russian state, and they have captured it. And all their policies, they are so focused on it that they have now dragged all of the countries in Europe into wanting to be part of that agenda. Some are beginning to push back, particularly Hungary, Slovakia, and Czech Republic.
Három ember az, aki ma alakítja Európa háborús politikáját. Itt őszintén kell arról is beszélnünk, ha már így összejöttünk, hogy valójában...
Indeed, this I agree with completely, because I have noticed and I wonder why you would have these people with such rabid intent against Russia. They don't discuss, they don't have any form of dialogue. They want to seize Russian money. It took the effort of people like Orban to stop them from doing things. They were not careful. They didn't bother about the concerns of Belgium and other small countries that have no historical anger. In fact, the Belgian Prime Minister says that he understands that some countries have historical anger against Russia, but that they shouldn't be part of it. So this is actually a very major statement he has made here now. This is Ukraine now, and CBI is the foreign minister of Ukraine, and warmth for Ukraine from the world. Ukraine is in a very bad situation regarding I can't take all of this. The picture is set against the background of the darkness that has enveloped Kiev. But it says, we are reaching out to all Ukrainian communities abroad, partners, friends, and benefactors worldwide with a call to support the Ukrainian people during this time of extreme winter frost and brutal Russian terror. Today, I instructed all our foreign diplomatic missions to initiate urgent fundraising campaigns similar to the one recently conducted by our Polish friends. As a reminder, our neighbors demonstrated true Polish leadership, already raising nearly $1 million through the Warmth for Kiev initiative. I want to thank each of the nearly 24,000 donors. We will always remember your solidarity during these difficult times. The problem now is that the partners that have egged and urged Ukraine into this war now have this little problem of having to deal with President Trump's claim on Greenland. It's a really worrying time for the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians have been trying to show that they were in the fight by doing a lot of damage to the Russian economy. They were hitting refineries, hitting depots and all. And the Russians just waited, as they always do. They waited for the winter. And now they have showing a capacity. The Gerarn 2 drones have been a monstrous addition to the Russian war arsenal. They have become like bees and hornets that go around and do devastation. Not to talk of the fact that there are still cruise missiles, the KH-101 cruise missile, the Zekon hypersonic missiles, the Kinjal missiles. These are all missile systems that the Ukrainians have run out of air defense to help them protect themselves. And I should point out also that this is one of the coldest winters ever. We are seeing snowfall at biblical levels. In places like Kamchatka, we are seeing huge amounts of snow, and it is really bad now. The frost is even making the Ukrainian soldiers, to be surrendering and to be giving up in the war in Zaporozhye, in Sumy and all. It's really a bad thing now. As we always know, the Russians, they have always relied on as they say, General Winter to help them in their wars. This is the story of the day. These same Gerarns we keep hearing about. Overnight, a Gerarn 2 drone struck a railway bridge in the town of Vlakivka, the Dnipropetrovsk Oblast. The drone was equipped with phosphorus warhead, which resulted in fire breaking out that burned for over 3 hours, melting the metal of the bridge. Since then, at least 2 more Gerarn strikes have been carried out on different targets in Vlakivka. So this definitely is a new capacity of the Russians. The Russians just come up with innovations. So they target this bridge. They know that the Gerarn 2 warhead on its own cannot burn or damage the bridge. So they add napalm to it and now phosphorus. And that bridge is now burning and burning. If for nothing else, that bridge steel structure will be compromised. It's not going to be used again. It obviously is important to the logistics of the Ukrainians, and it is for this reason the Russians would have targeted it. You can't take away the fact that the Russians have been very innovative. They are putting different applications to the Gerarn 2 drones. We see them also adding missiles to it to be able to shoot down planes. These days, you don't see those F-16s and helicopters going after the Gerarn 2 drones again, because they really don't know what will be coming back to hunt them or to bite them. And I should point out they've now produced almost 1,000 of these drones in a facility in Tatarstan a week, if not more, if not even a day. They are now in mass serial production. Well, we were just talking about Trump's provocation have reached the limit. French finance minister. This is the one we just watched now in a video. He says, we are constantly experiencing new provocation, new antagonism, which President Trump is seeking. And we as Europeans must make it clear that the limit has been reached. He was just saying now that he's not hoping for escalation, but they are going to escalate. We saw that video there. Well, I wish them well in anything they want to do. They have no hand. Trump has got them at a very bad time. They are very limited in their capacity. They are very limited in their, they have no wiggle room. The Europeans, they have expended all their goodwill, giving all their weaponry to Ukraine. And at this time when they are very low, the economy is bad, is when President Trump has made this move. Glenn Dizem, we know him. He has a very big podcast on YouTube. He's doing very well also on Twitter, and he's one of the world's leading geopolitical analysts with his platform. So this year, he says is Trump's fake narrative about the Ukrainian threat to Greenland presents the EU with the Russian threat, to Greenland presents the EU with a dilemma. The EU can defend Russia by claiming it has not threatened, which is unforgivable for Russophobic Europeans, or he cannot nod along and legitimize U.S. annexation of. Yeah, this is another tweet that President Trump put out today. He has been very gango today, very busy. NATO has been telling Denmark for 20 years that you have to get the Russian threat away from Greenland. Unfortunately, Denmark has been unable to do anything about it. Now it's time. Statements you make, shouting wolf and claiming wolf, has finally come to bite Greenland. They had made Russia the boogeyman, and for that reason now, President Trump now has an excuse to say, I'm coming to save you because the Russians are going to take Greenland. If not the Russians, the Chinese. It has now, there's a very satirical post. It says, Trump's fake narrative about Russian threats to Greenland presents the EU with a dilemma. The EU can defend Russia by claiming it has not threatened Greenland, unforgivable for the Russophobes of Russophobic Europeans, or it can nod along and legitimize the U.S. annexation of Greenland. Ultimately, I think President Trump will take Greenland if he wants it, especially since now the Washington Post, and indeed, there was one very funny post today. The press secretary to President Putin, Peskov, has actually said that taking Greenland will make President Trump a very huge historical figure in America. The Russians want that process to be completed. They are actually watching, and we see how Medvedev is trolling the Europeans. Just in, United Nations Secretary General Guterres says the United States views global cooperation as irrelevant and believes power matters more than international law. He also says the United Nations Security Council no longer represents the world and it's ineffective. Of course, these are truths. These are clear and present truths. Marco Rubio says they don't really care about the United Nations. They stated it clearly, I don't care about the United Nations. President Trump has said that it is his own morale that shapes his own policies. And we've seen how repeatedly, not over Greenland, ironically, it has been the issue of Israel, Gaza, repeatedly over time that has led to vetoes, more vetoes in the United Nations, even when all the countries and even when the United Nations General Assembly makes proclamations, and that veto has always been used to stomp international law and the desires of all the world. And for this now, we know that the United Nations Security Council has actually been, to a large extent, comatose. They've not really been effective as advocating because of that veto power that the 5 members have. So this is the situation here now. And besides, America has taken unilateral actions in some places where it didn't even need the framework of NATO, like in Iraq. So Guterres is only just saying what is the fact now to the world. He may just be saying it because his platform has been disenfranchised so much that it's even said that, who knows, the United Nations may even be disbanded. Good morning, New York. While you were sleeping, this was our most read story. EU readies 93 billion tariffs in retaliation for Trump's threat. The Financial Times is saying that, well, I don't have access to the Financial Times, but this is obviously the story that they believe was being made. Financial Times is a European newspaper, it's a British newspaper. They have their own agenda and their own narrative. They have their own viewpoints regarding this, and this may just be a bluff that will not come to pass. Europe has no leverage at all, none. They have no leverage. An $18 trillion market is what President Trump has, and that's a stick he's wielding on them. That's the stick he used on China. Luckily for China, China has a much more robust economy. They've opened up their trade to South America, to Latin America, to ASEAN, and to Africa. They were much more protected. We just saw how figures came out from trade figures came off of the Chinese, and they had a trade surplus of $1.2 trillion. Their trade with America reduced significantly. It only represents 2.5% of their total trade now, and yet they are making that kind of surplus. So, but Europe doesn't have that kind of wiggle room. They have only 2 markets, and that's America and China. And they are in a very bad situation. This year, we've seen 2 times. The German Chancellor, the German Finance Minister, Germany and France are united. We will not be blackmailed. There will be clear and united European response, and we are already preparing joint countermeasures. If President Trump maintains his tariff threat, Europe is ready. Well, we'll skip. We've done that already. Brian Baletic is the one who always says America has an agenda. He also is a big voice in geopolitics. He has a big YouTube following also. And former U.S. Marine focused on geopolitics in Eurasia. He always believes that America has all this planned, and they have already, that all they are doing is going through the whole plan as he always sees this. Greenland is a key location for U.S. ballistic missiles, very early warning systems. It could provide, I think we can do this. Yes, we can see Greenland. We can see a map that shows us the routes and how important Greenland is. It says it could provide a location to place more U.S. missiles closer to Russia itself, another obvious advantage, and increased U.S. military presence in Greenland will provide is adding additional assets to potentially interfere in Russia's Arctic Sea routes. A bookend in the West Alaska already provides the U.S. This will not happen. I can say that for a fact. Even though the Americans can have infrastructure in Greenland, whichever part of Greenland, they do have infrastructure. Let it not be said that America doesn't have presence here. America had at one time 32 bases or 30 bases in Greenland. They've always had this issue with the Soviet Union. They only paid down and now have 1 base there. But they've always had this access to Greenland. But the sea route that is of particular interest to the Russians now is this particular sea route, and that is the Northern Sea Route. This one goes all the way to China, and this is the one that they are developing. Takes them to Vladivostok, and it takes them to Asia. They are doing their best to bypass trading with the West because they are now not West leaning as they want to. They have little trade with the West, especially the European Union. And maybe they're also developing other routes to Africa. But regarding the fact that most of their trade now is to Asian countries, China and India, they are doing all their best to develop this particular Northern Sea route. And that's why they now have the world's largest fleet of nuclear icebreakers. They want it to be a year-round opening for them. And besides, it will be a monopoly for them anyway, because no other country has access to that, to being able to break the Arctic ice and go. And we should also remember that the Russians are putting military infrastructure all around our neighborhood to the worry of the Norwegians and all. So let's move on now. Open Source Secretary General says UN Security Council no longer represents the world and is ineffective. That's true. We've done that already. And then we say Trump is not mad. He's doing what Americans always does, just crazily out in the open. Yeah, America. Britain must declare independence from America or it would. There's a very funny relationship between Britain and America. To a large extent, Britain has used America very effectively for 80 years to fight its wars and maintain its interests, take care of its security, because America has all these bases in Britain, and Britain has been busy carrying on with its main interest, banking, and that's the banking that is saving that economy. Now, Britain is very laid bare. They don't have their own security. They don't have their own infrastructure. They don't have that. They do have a capacity to produce. After all, Rolls-Royce still remains a very, very formidable manufacturing company. We also know about BEA. They're also big in the industrial, and then they are part of most of the European aviation industry. Airbus, they provide stuff for Airbus, they are there for the Eurofighter. But if they are to produce their own, they may just not be able to. And we know the British military is actually just 70,000 people. So this is really a big problem for them. They are very naked. And Trump, so Telegraph is stating the obvious. Britain must declare independence from America or it will die. All of Europe have this little problem, a very little problem of dependency on America for security and for finance and for their markets and their trade to such an extent that They have no leverage against America, very unfortunately. Press reviewed Europe, US on brink of trade war as Russia ready to respond to UK plans. Top stories from yeah, TASS is the Russian news agency, and they're just saying that they're just stating what we have been reading all through. Homeland Security news updated about 1,500 active duty Army paratroopers from the 11th Airborne Division based in Joint Base Emeldorf, Richardson, Alaska, have been put on alert for a potential deployment to Minnesota. Yes, this is the base that President Trump had his meeting with President Putin. And we know what's been going on in Minnesota. There was a killing by an ICE agent, and it has sparked demonstrations for a long time now. Ongoing demonstrations, and President Trump is considering using the military again. Already we know he has deployed the military in Washington and some other cities all across America, and he may just be forced to deploy the military again. Putin received an invitation to join the Peace Council on Gaza created by Trump. Moscow is studying all the details of the proposal and hopes to contact Washington to clarify all the nouns. Russia's press secretary Peskov. This is interesting. President Trump wants President Putin to be part of the Peace Council, and in very typical Putin way, he's not effusive, he's very quiet, he's thoughtful, methodical, and he's listening to it. One thing though Putin has going for him, he's the only president in that neighborhood that is trusted by the Arabs, trusted by the people in Iran, and also I won't say he's trusted by Netanyahu because he tends to block Netanyahu, but at least Netanyahu still listens to him, if for nothing else, for the fact that the Russians can block any attempt, or just be that there can be a problem to the Israelis and stop them from having their way. So it makes sense that President Putin is part of it. President Putin also supported the Peace Council plan. He did not veto it in the United Nations. Russia didn't veto it. Nebenza, their permanent representative to the United Nations, did complain bitterly about what was going on. What he said, he felt that it was not a good deal for the people of Gaza and Palestine, but they didn't stop it. So I guess Putin will take his time and we'll get a response. The Russians are not quick to make their own decisions known. Russia to unveil advanced Supercan drones at UMX 2026 in Abu Dhabi. Russia exhibit to showcase 3 drones. Excuse me. The Supercam 350 flagship proven in civilian and military use. Supercam 1.8 new high-speed recon drone, and Supercam 4X dual-use multi-rotor. Nobody can doubt Russia's place in drone technology anymore. We see what this comes. One particular one, the Lancet and all the Orlan, they have all these suites of drones now. Some are reconnaissance drones, some are military munitions, and we've seen how much damage they're doing to the Ukrainians. They have become masters in this particular, at least when it has, like they said, dual use applications. So they will be taking part in a military exhibition in Abu Dhabi. The Russians are actually selling a lot of weapons these days to the whole world because their weaponry is actually battle-proven. A Ukrainian soldier decides to disarm a Russian drone spotted on the road. Despite the warnings from his colleagues in perfect Russian, he decided to continue. Ironic that they're speaking Russian. Let's see this. I think it ended up badly for him. So there he is. The Russians have these drones that they just keep on the road there, and these drones just wait and hunt cars that pass. I think this one was just trying to be brave, and as it turns out, it didn't end up well for him. It's a sad situation. The drones are the stars of the war. FVP drones, terrible weapon systems. Oh my God.
Сука, нахуй. Я ж казав не лізти, блядь. До нього ніколи не лізти.
We should remember that Russian is banned in Ukraine, and yet the Ukrainian soldiers are speaking in Russian. Let's just take this now as the last story. India rejects BRICS offer to trade in local currency. It wants US dollars. I don't know how true it is, but we know that every country now is making their economy more resilient. They are also one of the things, I don't know what if India has a currency swap deal with China. That way they would have been trading in local currencies. But we should remember that India and China had a problem since 2020 to 2025 when they started resolving that problem. And the Indians trade with the Russians in local currency, but there's a little problem for the Russians. The Indians don't sell so much to the Russians, so there are an imbalance in flow of Indian rupee to Russian ruble. And the Russians have stated that they prefer the Indians to trade with them in yuan, but geopolitical tensions is not allowing the Indians to make that decision. Ultimately, maybe the Indians will start making it. For now, they trade in dollars. And of course, we know that the Chinese are doing their best to move away from the dollar, and just the Russians also they can't trade in the dollar anymore. Anyway, this is where I'll end my video for today. If you're new to my channel, please subscribe. If you have any views regarding the opinions I just expressed, please put them in the comment section. Do well to like and share. Until my next video, you have a good day.